Jews in these countries is little known. Now even less widely known, especially relative to questions concerning Palestinian Arab refugees or their descendants, is the saga just in our last century of the near total exodus of ancient Jewish communities from nearly the entirety of the Middle East, totaling a number that exceeded that of Palestinian refugees. While the Palestinian population in Israel and lands under its control has also risen by some 700% since Israel's founding, the number of Jews in Arab countries has plummeted by 99% over the same period. Our presenters today will shed light on this recent history, which clearly has current ramifications. Before I introduce our first speaker, a word about my own organization, the world's oldest modern Jewish organization, B'nai B'rith, founded by Jewish immigrants in the United States over 180 years ago. B'nai B'rith, created with a pioneering humanitarian mission, and eventually in the forefront of Jewish engagement with the UN since the world body's founding 80 years ago, itself has roots across the Middle East. Beyond a dynamic presence in Jerusalem dating to 1888, B'nai B'rith once boasted chapters in regional countries including Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Algeria, and Sudan, among others. Testifying to communities that overwhelmingly are no more, those chapters are now long gone. But we continue to advocate peace and cooperation between Israel itself, a pluralistic democracy, and all its Arab neighbors, including Palestinians. We celebrated every milestone on the path to genuine regional coexistence from the 1978 Camp David Accords to the Abraham Accords of 5 years ago, and urged the expansion of the circle of common progress and partnership. Now, we are, of course, very mindful of the difficulty, yet again, of this particular moment in the region, including the atrocious terrorist attack in Jerusalem today. Our own people on the ground, from children to the elderly, including those displaced from neighboring states not many decades ago, have for too long known existential threat, unrelenting violence, exclusion, demonization, delegitimization, trauma, further displacement, and a feeling of global ignorance or indifference. But we convene here today not to trade accusations, but to underscore the importance of education, recognition, empathy, and the universal application of human rights. We are here to preserve historical memory and to give a voice while we can to those who have been largely forgotten, but also to promote conflict resolution that can only come with an unbiased, comprehensive approach to justice and with direct dialogue and compromise by the involved parties. Jews from Arab and Muslim countries can uniquely serve as a cultural bridge in a Middle East that remains all too divided. I'm now pleased to call upon our first distinguished speaker, Levana Zamil, who will share with us her personal story. Ms. Zamil serves as president of the International Organization of Jews from Egypt and the president of the Union of Jews from Egypt in Israel. Ms. Zamil, thank you so much for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Do you hear me? Yes. Well, bonsoir à tous, bonsoir les amis. وأهلا وسهلا بكم. الدنيا نورت. I hope you understand Arabic, okay? It's my, my first language. Well, my story begins in May 14, 1948, the day David Ben-Gurion declared establishment of the State of Israel. At midnight, 10 Egyptian officers burst in our house. They opened all the closets, all the drawers. They cut mattresses. I was 10 years old then. They found nothing, and they left. But they did the same to my uncle, the brother of my father, Habib Vidal. My father is Victor Vidal, and his brother, Habib. They did the same in his house. They found nothing too, but they took him to prison. They said, you are a Zionist, but he wasn't. He just wasn't. We had few adolescents in a Zionist movement. That's all, not not our family, not the generation of my father and my uncle. So the same night, they took to prison, like my uncle, 1,600 Egyptian Jews and 50 women. They put them in prison for 1.5 years without any trial, without trial at all, just because they are Zionists. Next day, they confiscated, the authorities, they confiscated our family business, one of the biggest printing company in Cairo. But it wasn't enough. Then persecutions began all over the streets of Cairo, where I was born. My brother, 16 years old then, was beaten until bleeding in the streets of Cairo by a group of young Arab Muslims, until bleeding really. By chance, his best friend, a Muslim, Ghazar, Muhammad Ghazar, I remember him. He was the best friend of my brother. He used to come to our house to sit with us in the balcony, a nice balcony, you cannot imagine, over the garden. And he came by chance and he shouted to the crowd. He said, "Leave him alone. He is a Muslim like us." He saved his life. Sometimes by night, the telephone rang. My father took the phone. Nobody there. Silence. Such frightening. Such a fright. Some other nights, we heard stones thrown in our windows. My father didn't even dare to open the window to see who did it. You know, at this time, in 1948, the Muslim Brotherhood declared that all the Jews of Egypt has to return to the status of dhimmi. You know what dhimmi is? But here, she was the first to say about it, to speak about it, and she wrote even books about it. It was just a second-class citizen, humiliated, persecuted, paying ransom. But they didn't succeed. Why? Because then the Muslim Brotherhood was just a marginal group of people. That's all. Today, it's not like that. We had 3 waves of expulsion. The first, 1949, it was my wave. The second, 1956, the second war we had with Egypt. And the third, the worst of them, in 1967. They put all the males, all the men, the Jews in Egypt, in prison for more than 2 years. That's how Egypt became free of Jews. We were 1 million Jews in Arab countries and Muslim countries. Today, none of them finished. This is really, really the best of the best of free of Jews. I don't know if they put my, yes, it's there. This is a certificat de réfugié. The Jews of Egypt received it when arriving to France after expulsion by the High Commissioner for Refugees at the United Nations in France for the Jews of Egypt in 1956, because we became stateless. So we are refugees. What are we talking about? We are refugees. We don't have to fight for this. This is a certificat de réfugié. Well, I have to finish, I think. I have 2 minutes. After the refugee camp in France, the Camp d'Arenas, where we arrived, while we were there yet, I tried to go out of the camp with my younger brothers, and a group of children our age laughed at us, and they said, Sale Juif, dirty Jew. I didn't understand what it is. I asked my mother, what's that? She said, they don't like us, leave them alone. That's all. But we understood this France in 1949. And even when they took my uncle in prison in Egypt, my own trauma was something else. The next morning, arriving at school, the teacher told me they took your uncle to prison. For me, 10 years old girl, it was a crime. You go to prison when you are a criminal. I cried. I went to my mother asking her. She said, no. She said calmly, no. They took him to prison because you are Jews. Well, all of a sudden for me, being a Jew became a crime. I felt marginal. Well, my best friend at school was a Muslim, Ayten Heikal, that's an aristocratic family in Egypt. The second best friend was a Christian, Yvonne Fadul. But I felt marginal all the same. It's not really, it's not normal at 10 years old to feel like that. My parents never told us nothing, but I understood that nothing will be the same again. And it wasn't. Well, today, we could say only one thing. Israel, the state of Israel who saved us, which saved us. Israel, the state of Israel is a miracle. God help us so this miracle could continue for the people of Israel, for Am Israel. Toda Rabah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zamil, for your very powerful and impactful testimony and for having traveled here to be with us at the United Nations in Geneva today. Thank you. We will now hear from Dr. Henry Green. Dr. Green is professor of religious studies at the University of Miami in the United States. He's the founding director of the Jewish Museum of Florida and of Sephardi Voices, a digital archive of Jews from Arab countries. He has served as a visiting fellow at Oxford University and at the University of Toronto, and has given testimony to the Congressional Human Rights Caucus in the United States as an advocate for the rights of those displaced. Dr. Green, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And excellencies and guests. What I'm going to try to do is put things into context, telling the story and plight of indigenous Jews who lived in North Africa and the Middle East, an ethnic group with a continuous presence for 3 millennia, stretching from the Tigris-Euphrates to the Atlantic Ocean, who were suddenly and tragically displaced from Muslim lands in the latter half of the 20th century. This presentation does not diminish the plight of Palestinians who were displaced during the 48 War. But like many of you in this room who are refugees, I am a child of a Ukrainian refugee who was displaced. This presentation does not take away my rights as the child of a refugee. So let me begin with the voices of some of these Jews who were displaced.
It was a nice life, but it was a dream. It was not a real life. Still, we were strangers in our own country.
Louder.
I feel my past is a total void because when the Jews left Egypt, when they were expelled, they were scattered around the world.
Yes, I am a refugee. Yes, I'm a refugee. They kicked me out with all my family, with nothing, nothing.
On est tous des réfugiés des pays arabes, on est 1 million. Et il faut se battre pour ça. Il faut continuer à qu'on reconnaisse notre cause, qu'on a été expulsé d'un pays qu'on ne voulait pas quitter. On ne voulait pas quitter, on nous a expulsés.
We were attached to something that we, even without knowing it, we had lost.
On se sent jamais chez soi quand on est dépossédé de sa terre. J'aimerais bien pouvoir retourner, mais on sait qu'on ne pourra jamais retourner.
Oh, I didn't do this again. Okay. So the patriarchs and matriarchs of Judaism are the ancestors of the Jews from Muslim lands, the Jewish kings, David and Solomon, Jesus, James, the brother of Jesus, and Paul. So if you can show a slide. The biblical books is one way of having a religious marker. Avadia in the Old Testament, Romans, both mention Sepharad, later identified as Sephardi Jews from Islamic lands. So in the 7th century AD, Islam arose and within less than a century had linked the Tigris and Euphrates rivers to the Atlantic Ocean as a geopolitical entity. During the following centuries, through a process of Arabization and Islamization, these conquered regions became identified as the Arab world, and non-Arab, non-Muslim minorities, Copts, Berbers, Jews, Nubians, Druze, etc., the original indigenous inhabitants of the region became minorities in their own lands. So next slide. So in summary, literary, archaeological, numismatic, sociological data trace more than 2,500 years of recorded Jewish history in the Middle East and North Africa, including periods of a Jewish sovereign state during Babylonian, Persian, and Roman eras. Or let me say it a different way. A Jewish presence in Arab lands has a legacy that is older than European countries. In Arab lands, although spread out from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, Jews function more as a holistic community than as disparate. On the broad issues of Jewish law and customs, community organization, common cultural patterns, from food to synagogue rituals, the Arab Jewish world is more homogeneous than diverse. However, under Islamic rule, Jews and Christians were considered second-class subjects. Under the Pact of Omar, they were designated as dhimmis, a legally tolerated but humiliated class. Though granted limited protection, they were subjected to social, legal, and economic discrimination. Depending on geopolitics, everyday life was like the weather, unpredictable, with limited religious and educational opportunities. They were permitted to practice their faith only by paying a special tax known as the jizya. The status of Jews was legitimated by the religious writings of the Quran. Jews were restricted legally and judicially. For example, evidence was not accepted by a non-Muslim against that of a Muslim in an Islamic court. Their commercial activities were heavily restricted, and they were excluded from positions of authority. Synagogues could not rise higher than mosques. Jews were forbidden to ride horses, only donkeys. Under Ottoman rule, Jews faced fluctuating conditions, from oppression to limited reforms. With the European invasion in the 19th and early 20th centuries in the Middle East and North Africa, life changed dramatically for non-Muslims and for Jews and Christians living in Arab lands. Europeanization became the norm in many parts of these countries. On the ground, this meant foreign protection for Jews and a change of perception from dhimmi to subjects accorded European rights, entitlements, and opportunities. In North Africa, France occupied Algeria in 1830, and within a few decades, the Jews of Algeria became full French citizens. And if you look at North Africa and you look at the Middle East, the same is happening: colonization and Europeanization. During this period of European colonizations, schools became a catalyst for Jews to escape from dhimmi status and erect a community structure with collective assets. Welfare institutions, synagogues, cemeteries, fraternal clubs, schools, kosher restaurants, medical clinics, youth camps, etc., protected by the values and laws of the European protectorates. In each country, the patterns of adaptation differed, but the result was much the same: a welcoming of modernity and increased civil and human rights. With the rise of Arab independence movements and anti-colonial demonstrations, civil rights for minorities deteriorated. This was compounded for Jews. Arab nationalists were enraged by the organized settlement of European Jews under the protection of the imperialist power Britain in Palestine. Widespread persecution and mass violations of human rights became normative in Arab lands. Hitler's rise to power in Germany and subsequent occupation of France and its colonies led to tragic consequences for Jews in their Arab protectorates. Policies included confiscation of property, fines, taking of hostages, establishment of labor camps, and transportation to European death camps. In each Arab country where Germany was active, there were Muslim leaders that supported the Nazi reign of terror. In particular, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem openly allied with Nazi Germany and spread anti-Semitic propaganda that deepened Jewish vulnerability across the region. Many of these leaders would be the fathers of their liberation movements in the post-World War II era and propagate anti-Jewish and anti-colonial patterns with strong Arab and Islamic overtones. For Jews living in Arab lands, the UN resolution to partition Palestine in 1947 brought immediate challenges. Arab leaders, such as the Egyptian delegate to the UN, Hakal Pasha, vocally and publicly threatened Jews pre the United Nations vote. In 1947, the Political Committee of the Arab League drafted a law that it was to govern the legal status of Jewish residents in all Arab countries. It provided, among other measures, that, quote, all were to be considered members of the Jewish minority state of Palestine, that their bank accounts would be frozen and used to finance resistance to Zionist ambitions in Palestine. So that when you had up before on the grid, that one with the grid, yeah. So numerous methods were used to drive virtually all Jews of the Middle East out of the Middle East and North Africa. Among them was expulsion, state-sanctioned oppression, denial of citizenship, quarantine and detention of people, legal restrictions, economic sanctions, socioeconomic discrimination, violence, and pogroms. When 6 Arab countries declared war against Israel in May 48, the status of Jews in Arab states became even more intolerable. There was a surge in state legislated discrimination and repressive measures. In Iraq, identifying with Zionism became a capital crime. The video of Steve Aker. Oh, no sound. So how do you get the sound?
Suddenly you heard people shouting and yelling and outside our houses. We had a tree, nakhla, at the beginning of the house, and I climbed the tree and It's about 15 feet high, and I was hiding in between to see what's happening outside. And I saw a lot of men with swords in their hands, with rifles and what kind of things, and they're shouting, "اقتل اليهود اذبح اليهود." Kill the Jews, kill the Jews. And I was saying to myself, what the hell did I do at 9 years old that they want to come kill me?
So we have the map. Slide 4, the map. So nearly 600,000 Arab Jews sought refuge in Israel from 48 to 73, and another 250,000 fled to France, the Americas, and other countries that offered a safe haven. Jews in Arab countries had little choice if they wanted life, liberty, religious freedom, and ethnic identity. As each Arab state realized their dream, a non-colonized independent nation state, Jewish survival and community sustainability became increasingly precarious. What followed was not a mere exodus, but the erasure of Jewish communities. Their numbers tell the story. In 48, 370,000 Jews lived in Morocco and Tunisia. After gaining independence, 56, only 60,000 remained by 68. In 1958, 130 Jews resided in Algeria. By the end of the Algerian War, turn of the century, no Jews lived in Algeria. Community property abandoned was constituted as heirless property. So just the end video 3.
Les mon-pères qui avaient une relation très particulière dans le sens qu'ils étaient capables de parler avec des musulmans puisqu'ils parlaient leur langue. Il était lui aussi avec des amis musulmans. Et c'est eux qui sont venus lui dire, Monsieur Lévy, il ne faut pas rester. Il faut quitter l'Algérie. En tant que juif, je sais que c'était à Sidi-Mafouk, c'était la banlieue. Autour de Sidi-Mafouk, il y avait des villages arabes. Et un jour, ils ont décidé de descendre en masse. Ils ont voulu quitter leur bled, leur village. Ils sont descendus avec des haches, avec des faux, avec des lances, avec des armes blanches. Mais ils avaient envie de tuer du français, de tuer du juif. Donc là, on a entendu la sirène, on avait une sirène au-dessus de notre immeuble qui s'est mise à sonner. Et ça a été le facteur déclenchant. Mon père a dit, c'est terminé, on s'en va.
In Egypt, 75,000 Jews in 48, by 68, 2,500. Julia Glazer.
Knocking at the door, presenting my father with papers, and telling him, you have 48 hours for you and your family to leave this country. So you can imagine. This is mom and dad and 4 children. And you can only take a suitcase and maybe 2 bracelets and whatever. You know, again, at the age of 12, 13, it's, you know, things are kind of vague in my mind. But I have to tell you something very important that I must add to this. A lot of the Jews who had been there for generations were apartheid. They had no citizenship. If you are born in Egypt and you are a Jew, you are not Egyptian. You have to be a Muslim to be Egyptian. So many of the Jews who were told to leave did not know where to go.
When the issue of refugees is raised within the context of the Middle East, people invariably refer to the Palestinian refugees, not former Jewish refugees from Arab countries. Let me be clear. There were 2 major population movements that occurred during the years of turmoil. Nearly 1 million Jews from North Africa, the Middle East, and Iran were dislocated, lost property and assets. If one adds their children and grandchildren, their numbers increase to several million. The legitimate call to secure rights and redress for Jews who were forced to flee Arab countries is not a campaign against Palestinian refugees. It is an initiative to ensure that the plight of Jewish refugees from Arab countries be placed on the international political agenda as a quest for truth and justice, and their rights be secured as a matter of law and equity. It is also a call for other minorities to be recognized and addressed. Today, Christians are exiting the Middle East in greater numbers than ever before. Lessons from the past loom on the horizon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Green, for that very extensive presentation, which was certainly informative indeed. We now move on to Dr. Stanley Ehrman, the real force behind today's discussion. Dr. Ehrman will speak about Jewish refugees from Arab countries, legal and political recognition. Dr. Ehrman is the Executive Vice President of Justice for Jews from Arab countries. Formerly, he was Executive Director of the Center for Middle East Peace, based in Washington and New York, and he also served as the Executive Director of the Canadian Human Rights Foundation. Additionally, for several years, he taught courses on the politics of the Middle East at Rutgers University in the United States. And Dr. Ehrman, it has been a genuine privilege to partner with you and with your JJAC colleagues on this event. Thank you for all that went into it. The floor is yours.
For the past 75 years, the Arab-Israeli conflict has dominated Middle East affairs. The ultimate and inevitable victims of these years of strife are the people of the region who were uprooted from their homes. As we've seen or heard today, two populations of refugees emerged from this conflict: Palestinians from mandated Palestine and Jews from Arab countries. I am here to tell you today that Palestinians were not the only refugees. I'm here also to document the legal and political basis upon which we assert rights for Jewish refugees from Arab countries. When JJAC first went to the United States State Department to inquire about the US position on Jewish refugees from Arab countries, we were met with great skepticism. They asked us, what makes you think that they were refugees? They had a country to go to. What makes you think that they're even important to raise today? They're no longer refugees. They have no rights. Why are you even bringing this to our attention? Good questions. And at that time, in 2001, we had no answers. After a year of legal research, JJAC determined that Jews fleeing Arab countries did meet the international standard for who is a refugee. The 1951 Convention of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees sets three conditionings for determining who is a refugee. Number one, that the person has a well-founded fear of being persecuted. Number two, that he or she is outside the country of nationality. And three, that they are unable or unwilling to avail themselves of the protection of that country. Clearly, this definition applies to Jews displaced from Arab countries and Iran. At that same time, their status as refugees was formally recognized by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Here we see that on two occasions, the UNHCR determined publicly that Jews from Arab countries were indeed bona fide refugees according to international law under the protection of the High Commissioner for Refugees. The first time was in 1957 when Jews were fleeing from Egypt, and the second time was in 1967 when Jews were fleeing from North African countries. Now, the scale of this forced displacement constitutes one of the most significant and overlooked cases of ethnic cleansing in modern history. Moreover, there is no statute of limitations on the rights of refugees, so Jews can still legally petition for redress for the mass violations of human rights, as well as for personal losses. The scale of this displacement is massive. From a population of nearly 1 million Jews living in 11 Arab countries and Iran in 1948, less than 13,000 remain today. From 1947 onwards, the UN was faced with two refugee populations, both at the same time, both emerging from the same conflict. Yet there is a glaring anomaly in the way the United Nations treated or responded to these two different Middle East refugee populations. The record is a damning indictment of the United Nations. Look at the facts. Let's begin with the United Nations Security Council. From 1946 to 2024, there were a total of 338 Security Council resolutions on Middle East in general and 9 resolutions on Palestinian refugees in particular. Not one resolution specifically on Jewish refugees from Arab countries. The General Assembly was even worse. From 1946 to 2024, the General Assembly devoted fully 21% of all resolutions on the Middle East only and solely to Palestinian refugees, more than on any other single Middle East topic. Of course, there were never any General Assembly resolutions that specifically addressed the issue of Jewish refugees from Arab countries. There is, however, one important Security Council resolution that hints, just hints, at a recognition of Jewish refugees from Arab countries, namely UN Resolution 242, which the Security Council adopted on November 22nd, 1967. Sorry. Excuse me. UN Resolution 242 stipulates that a comprehensive peace settlement should necessarily include a just settlement of the refugee problem. The most important resolution on peace in the Middle East never mentions Palestinian refugees. It mentions the refugee problem. No distinction is made between Arab refugees and Jewish refugees. This was the intent of the resolution's co-sponsor, U.S. Ambassador Justice Arthur Goldberg, who stated after the resolution's adoption, and I quote, "The language of Resolution 242 refers to both Arab and Jewish refugees, for about an equal number of each abandoned their homes as a result of several wars." So no formal UN recognition, but one UN resolution that would allow for claims as Jewish refugees. Additionally, the rights of Jewish refugees from Arab countries find expression in numerous legal and political declarations. The Madrid Conference created a working group whose mandate was to consider practical ways of improving the lot of people throughout the region who have been displaced from their homes. Generic language, again, applicable to both Palestinian and Jewish refugees. The roadmap to Middle East peace refers to a, and I quote, agreed, just, fair, and realistic solution to the refugee problem. Again, language applicable to both Palestinians and Jews. The 1979 Egypt-Israel Peace Treaty, the Treaty of Peace between Israel and Jordan, even agreements between Israel and the Palestinian authorities do not contain any reference whatsoever to Palestinian refugees. All the legal documents that have been signed between Israel and her neighbors do not refer to Palestinian refugees, but to language applicable to both. There has also been recognition by some political leaders of the rights of Jewish refugees. Oops. Well, one slide is missing. I'll skip this. Jimmy Carter, after Camp David I, referred to Jewish refugees. President Bill Clinton, after Camp David II, referred to Jewish refugees. Canadian Prime Minister Paul Martin recognized Jewish refugees in a statement to the press in 2010. And the UK Prime Minister Theresa May, at the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, returned to Jewish refugees from Arab countries. Lastly, rights of Jewish refugees from Arab countries has been enshrined in 2 groundbreaking legislative and parliamentary initiatives in the United States and Canada. In 2008, the U.S. Congress unanimously adopted House Resolution 185, proclaiming that U.S. diplomats in any Middle East negotiations will ensure, and I quote, any explicit reference to Palestinian refugees in Middle East negotiations must include an explicit reference to Jewish refugees and Christian refugees as well. That is a resolution of the U.S. Congress. Canada in 2014 officially recognized, quote, the experience of Jewish refugees who were displaced from states in the Middle East and North Africa after 1948. So all these legislative and political efforts underscore the moral and legal imperative to ensure the rights of all bona fide refugees are fully acknowledged, respected, and addressed within any putative resolution of the conflict of the Middle East. In closing, I wish to underscore that recognizing Jews displaced from Arab countries is a call for truth, justice, and reconciliation. In the words of the Honorable Irwin Cotler, former Justice Minister of Canada, where there is no truth, there will be no justice. Where there is no justice, there will be no reconciliation. And where there is no reconciliation, there will never be durable peace between and among all peoples of the region. Thank you very much.
Sincere thanks, Dr. Ehrman, for those remarks and for all that you and JJAC do. Thank you again. Last but not least, we turn to our final presenter, Sylvain Abitbol, who will talk about historic losses. Mr. Abitbol serves as co-president of Justice for Jews from Arab Countries. He was born in Morocco and departed for France in 1967. He then immigrated with his family to Canada in 1968. He has been an entrepreneur in the high-tech field since 1984, trained in telecom by Xerox Corporation in the United States. He graduated as a mechanical and industrial engineer from École Polytechnique in 1973. He has served as co-president of JJAC since 2003. Mr. Abitbol, thank you very much for being with us. The floor is yours.
My name is Sylvain Abitbol. As you know, I was born in Morocco. And like the other million of Jews, we left in '67 because the conditions were not allowing us to live in peace. When we got to Canada, I'll never forget what my mother told us. Don't be bitter. Don't do self-pity. Just go ahead, get yourself an education and go to work. And this is what I did. Graduated from École Polytechnique with a high score. And after having worked for two major US corporations, I started to build my business. Put two companies on the stock market, one on the Montreal stock market, the other one on the Toronto stock market, and got involved also in my community. I got the Queen Elizabeth Jubilee Award for my contribution to Canada. I got the Musée de la Civilisation Award from the province of Quebec for my contribution to Quebec. And I got the Samuel Brofman Award, which is the highest award of the Jewish community in Montreal. Having said that, where do we stand today? Could you show the map, please? No, the one before, the map. Martin Gilbert map.
Martin Gilbert? Not there.
Okay, doesn't matter. Look at those numbers. Those are the numbers. I have managed a group of economists, historians, analysts over 5 years through a very severe and thorough methodology, going through archives, sources, to come out with a number that could represent potentially the amount of losses of Jews in Arab lands. We divided our research in two projects, one for the first 4 countries, where we had the most available sources of information, archives and everything. And those come out for Egypt, Iran, Iraq, and Syria to $166 billion of today's dollars. The other countries, for various reasons, where we use another methodology. All that will be available in the final report that can be scrutinized. The total number is $260 billion. But ladies and gentlemen, like Albert Einstein said, not everything that counts can be counted. Not everything that can be counted counts. Let's look at beyond those numbers. Imagine for 1 minute, if the Jews have left, what would have been the importance, the impact of the Jews in those countries? What would have been the impact of the banking system of the other countries on fashion, on entrepreneurship, on law, on music, on movies? Everything has been built. Everything would have been made available to those countries, but they said no. Today, we stand with the narrative saying Jews are from Europe, they are colonials. Could be. Jews also don't belong to the space. We just showed that we are coming from the same geographical space. Jews are not refugees, we are refugees. So like Dr. Ehrman, or I should call you my friend Stan, said, we need to rectify history. We need to let them know. We're gonna be publishing a final report, which will be 1,000 pages, highly documented. We have now an executive summaries of those 11 countries that will be distributed for whoever wants to take them. And I would like to thank you all, and to thank you also those people who are watching us on YouTube, because this will be also channeled through YouTube. We've done a lot of work. We hope that we can make the difference. And I'm convinced if the other parties look at us as equal, you suffered, we suffered. You lost, we lost. We live in the same space, we live in the same space. So let's learn to live together if it's possible. Maybe this will be the kind of process that can be used to see we both suffered. It's time now for both of us to stop suffering. It's now time for Israel to be identified as the only places where Jews today are safe. Hopefully, more countries will be also the same. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. To use a few minutes to talk, Mrs. Batior, where are you? Voilà.
Thank you very much. You hear me?
Say a few words.
Thank you very much. Thank you to allow me to say a few words. It was very interesting. I was very grateful for all what each one has done to make this history a little bit known. But I think that we are meeting, all of us coming from different parts of the world, for a mission. There is a message in our activity. And this message is given by our patrimony, our history, our heritage, our 3,000 years, even more, of living in this part of the world. This message, because I have to be quick, is that we have to understand why we have been reducing the condition of demitude, because this is what characterizes us, our destiny, that we have become dhimmi. Why? Because of the jihad war. The jihad war started with Muhammad against the Jews in Arabia. It has a message. This war has continued afterwards against all the Christian nations, against in Asia, against the Buddhists, against the Hindu, in the same way as the Jews were attacked. And what is the aim of the jihad war? The jihad war the aim is to reduce non-Muslim people into the condition of dhimitude. We have to know the laws of dhimitude, which are all coming from Sharia. And now we can see that this jihad war is threatening the whole world, as
Madam,
it is threatening.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm being given the signal that they're about to close the feed. So just 10 more seconds, if you could. Sorry about that.
Je dois fermer? Ah. So what I say is that now the jihad war, as we see, are threatening the whole non-Muslim world and even the Muslim world. And
Thank you.
and the condition of
Thank you, madam.
dimitude.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. As you can see, we're being given the signal, unfortunately, that we're about out of time. If I understood, His Excellency, the Ambassador of Israel, would like to make a quick intervention. Thank you.
Much, and thank you, JJAC and Bnei Brit, for organizing this important event. In 2014, the Knesset passed a law to establish a day to commemorate in Israel the Jewish refugees and exiles from Arab countries and Iran. I'm proud to have been involved in this important legislation. This legislation decided that the day of the November the 30th will be the day we commemorate this important issue, the 30th of November being the day after the 29th of November, the day that the resolution 181, the partition plan, passed at the UN, the plan to establish the state of Israel. Following the partition plan, as we know, that's when the persecution and expulsion of the Jewish communities from the long-standing homes in the region began. So that is why symbolically we mark the 30th of November. And I just want to say that it is so important that you're having this event here in this building, in this time. Toda rabba.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Unfortunately, with that, we've run out of time, but really we thank each of you and our entire online audience for your participation, especially at this busy and also very challenging time. Again, we express our deep thanks to Justice for Jews from Arab countries, especially Dr. Stanley Orman and JJAC Switzerland President David Cohen for the opportunity to collaborate on this event. And we sincerely thank each of our speakers, Sylvain Bitbol, Levana Zamir, and Dr. Henry Green for their illuminating presentations and testimonies. Additionally, I thank all of my B'nai B'rith colleagues, including Oren Drury and Alan Schneider, among others, for their work on this program, and not least Nathan Shishpotish and Adi Schvautz for working so closely with us. We hope you will all continue to remain constructively engaged on this important issue, and we wish all of you a good evening from Geneva. Thank you. Anyone who would like to take a copy of the report, they'll be available at the front table.